Right, can we all settle down? Welcome back. We are on item number 6, public speaking time responses. That's nothing on that one, will be part of the report. Any leave of absence? Now's your time. None. 6C, matters of an urgent nature, nothing. Mayor's report, you got a copy of that, a very short one? No? Gee, somebody's going to... Right, we'll just table it next time. It's very short anyway. Nil. Mayor's report, nil. Item number 8, reports. The first one is Kāpiti Gateway project. We've got Natasha and Darren.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kia ora koutou, everyone. In terms of, I'll try and keep this as straightforward as possible, given there's been a lot which has already been traversed today and prior to in relation to this this piece of work. So I will be taking the report as read. What the report is seeking is a council decision on whether or not to proceed with the project and whether or not to provide the 50% of funding for that. The report also provides some further information in relation to the project. There are a number of attachments to it, and it reports back on some updates and changes that have been made to the compared to the initial business case. Just a couple of points I will make. The co-funding from the government significantly improves the affordability of the project. There is a timeliness needed in the decision today. There is the potential for funding to be at risk if the decision is not made today, whether or not to proceed with it. And the other point is it's come up in some of the feedback we've heard from various aspects of the various people within the community, is just to confirm that the funding isn't transferable to another project. It has been provided by the infrastructure reference group as a shovel-ready project for the specific proposal. And I think at this stage I'll just leave it leave it there, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Right, questions, and please ask questions and don't give us a huge... I don't mind a tiny preamble to frame your questions. The first one I got Councillor Mclean.
Just a tiny preamble, you say. Mr. Mayor, I've got a question because I have been concerned about council. We've got two decisions I see that we're making. One is yes, no. The other one is whether we're voting towards one of the three options, and I've raised it with yourself and various staff. I'd like to know when we should discuss that particular part of it, because I do think it's relevant. And the second part that I've raised with the CE is about a review process that I'd like him to speak to at some point. But that first question, when is it appropriate to help shape the discussion about replacing the substantive motion?
Chief Executive.
Councillor, I thought you were going to ask no questions of me, so I should just throw to someone else. Is that right? Normally it would be appropriate during debate for you to raise an alternative motion. If, however, you feel in this instance it would help to inform the table with what you may be suggesting, I think you might want to put that on the table fairly early, but normally it would be after questions. Does that help? Normally you'd raise it during debate.
I'm in your hands.
You can... Normally people sort of foreshadow a particular approach.
Sure.
So you have a choice of doing that now so that you can be...
So I'm just being moved around. Nothing preempts the yes/no decision. I'm just foreshadowing one of the other things that's come to me within the working group is that I do think that for council to make a decision today on which of those three options, I think there are some risks. They've been raised by not only members of the public but directly by people who we've considered stakeholders, that there is some information in council itself has acknowledged that we are still in a phase of working through what's what the inside of the building would look like. So my plea to councillors is that obviously this is separate from a yes/no decision, but I do think we should not make a decision on which of the three options. And I could speak at length as to why, but I think Natasha is nodding as to.
So do I gather that the question to staff is whether they've got full information on that particular area?
So I think perhaps probably the answer is that is in terms of what if the council was of mind to vote yes now, we don't need a decision from council at this stage as to what suite of functions you would want within the centre. That can be worked through as part of the further design stages which are yet to come.
Any other questions? I've got Councillor Elliott, then Councillor Holbrook.
Okay, thank you. Natasha, just bear with me. I ended up with about 10 pages of notes from today's decision. So I just wanted to confirm with you that according to the report, we have a loss of 17 car parks. However, 20 additional car parks been put in one new parking area and 30 car parks, including overnights, in the secure parking area of the golf club. So being a net increase of 33 car parks at Paraparaumu Beach. I have two further questions.
A couple of things around that. So the redevelopment of the car park would make a much more efficient use of the spaces, the corner of Mclean Street one. So there would be 20 parks in there, plus or including two accessible spaces. The golf club proposal is still a lot of design work that needs to be done in terms of how that might work. It will be a commercial arrangement, so it's still subject to a bit of commercial negotiation in relation to how that would actually pan out.
Thank you. Can I ask? Sorry. Can I ask? Is there any intention for a bridge to be built between the the golf club property and turning Mackay Street, which is currently a cul-de-sac, into a through road for this car park, as has been suggested to some residents by way of a letterbox drop that did not come from council?
My understanding is that it's not.
Okay, thank you. According to the PwC report, am I right in thinking that the cost per annum to run the gateway is looking in the region of $247,000 per annum? Would that be right? As opposed to $400,000 to $800,000 as has been quoted to the public in the wording of a petition?
So page 41 of the PwC report, on page 61 of the agenda papers, is probably the clearest way of seeing that. And so that shows what the potential costs are, whether or not it's a surplus or a loss from year to year. At most, there is projected to be a loss of just over $100,000, depending on which option it would be.
So it's not $800,000 at all? Cost to ratepayers?
No,
okay.
And it's not $400,000.
And could I also confirm that the net impact on rates increases this year for this project?
So my understanding is it would be around about 0.148%.
A question, last question of the CE perhaps. I just wondered if I could have an update on the exact number of ratepayers that we have in Kāpiti this year, or this time. Sorry, It's a question I've asked before.
Number of ratepayers is 25,500, roughly.
So I would understand then that potentially if we say yes to this project, we're listening to 22,300 ratepayers. Would that be correct? Because another 3,200 have signed in a petition. Thank you.
So, there have been various questions around why this does or doesn't trigger the significance policy. So I said I'd bring that question to the table today. In the report, it says that there is a wide range. There is a lot of public interest, which is one of the criteria for triggering the significance policy, but that it doesn't meet the threshold. Could you please explain why?
So I think I'll clarify what's in the paper, and then I might hand over to Tim. So what the paper noted was that there is a degree of public interest. I think the wording in the policy is that there needs to be a widespread, district-wide interest in it.
Tim.
So just looking at the significance and engagement policy, there are a number of matters that go to whether or not a decision is significant. One of the matters that you've identified is whether the issue in question has generated some public interest. What I think, and the way the significance policy is expressed, it talks about, sorry, I just want to make sure I get this accurate. The level of community interest. And clearly this project directly impacts on, a relatively small group of people down at the beach. It has a much broader impact on ratepayers in general. We've just heard Natasha explain, what the financial impact is on the community as a whole, and that's a relatively small amount. In terms of how we look at public interest, it would be fair to say that the issue has generated a considerable, there's been a lot of debate by a relatively small number of people. We've heard that there has been a survey that 3,500 people have signed. That isn't a survey that we've had any control over, and I think what elected members need to take into account, and certainly what staff have taken into account, is that the framing of that survey contains some inaccurate information. So we have discounted that survey to some extent. But at the end of the day, we've made a judgment call that we haven't actually looked specifically at whether that public interest is triggered just on that one criterion, but we've looked at all the criteria as we're required to, and made a judgment call that the policy hasn't been triggered.
So you talked about the one criterion, which is public interest, but the significance policy, you need to look at all of the criterion or a set of them. They were to be, is that right?
So we've got to look at. We need to look at all the criterion. and we can't look at one criterion in isolation.
Anybody else? Councillor Compton.
Are we just doing the discussion on that specific significance and engagement stuff at the moment? Because I'm a bit like Jackie, a few pages.
Question time. If you've got a question related to that, you're free to ask.
Okay, I'll kick off with that so we pick up where we were. How many requests to speak today did we receive, including those people who ultimately couldn't turn up because of timing issues? 27?
29.
So the one thing that, just on that discussion about public interest, I know that on the council Facebook page last week it specifically said there is a high degree of public interest in this, and then here we're just saying there's some degree in this paper. I'm just concerned about how that inconsistency could be viewed.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mr Mayor. Not inconsistent. There has been quite a lot of noise, and you've heard a reference to that. That is not the same as saying under the significance policy that triggers certain responses that are required in terms of the level of consultation required. So where something that we're doing is consistent with a range of previous decisions, such as has been referred to repeatedly today, right back to 2012-13, that ameliorates the level of significance from a single decision, and that's really where we're coming from. This is consistent with many other things that have been done, and so a high level of interest is obviously a good thing as a rule, but doesn't necessarily trigger actions as a result of the significance and engagement policy.
Thank you. Just following up on another one there. So my understanding is that Mclean Park would be considered under the definition of strategic assets as one of our strategic assets. It's listed under was it clause 18 that
we don't own it.
Amenity parks under the Reserves Act. Amenity parks, sports fields and facilities under the Reserves Act 1977 as a whole.
As a whole, correct. So no single park is a
Okay.
strategic asset.
Cool. No, that's very helpful. That removes the next question. The final one was about how it aligns with the management plan for the reserve. And I guess my question is, I've seen the initial preliminary review by George Canham Consulting around that. But I was looking back at the Mclean Park plan, and in terms of the consideration of a gateway in there, it didn't include those sort of retail activities that we've now got in a couple of the options here. Is there the possibility that if the final review comes in and says that's not consistent, does that mean we'd potentially have to consult on that, or could that get addressed? I think George mentioned it in his report. Would that be addressed when we go out to lease those spaces? Because I think he mentioned a possible public notification around that or something.
Yeah, so a couple of things in relation to George's report. He did identify, so Jeff's report, there was there would be additional consideration that would need to be given as we go through the design phase and as we settle on what functions will be part of the centre or not. The overarching conclusions he reached was he didn't see anything in terms of what was being considered more broadly as being inconsistent or misaligned. I think he used the words with what the management plan sets out. But you're right in terms of the leases do go through a consultation process as well.
So essentially, that sort of engagement gets dealt with when we get down to that stuff. Cool. That's actually really helpful. Thank you. I'll park the rest of that for now. So on recommendation 82 in the paper around the amount we're approving today, if there's any cost overruns in terms of that budget, would that come back to council for us to pass another resolution in terms of reallocating money?
It would depend on the materiality against the budget. If there was an overspend that was minor, it would be reported to you. If it was larger than that and we needed to reallocate funds, then yes, as we from time to time do, we would come and say this is how it needs to be dealt with.
Perfect. I'm just checking which ones have actually been addressed through this, which is probably most of them. I guess the final one was one that got brought up to me the other day, and that was around have we consulted any of the disability groups around the design so far, or is that going to come in the more detailed design phase?
I'm not sure exactly what consultation might have been done with them to at this point in time, but it would be something that would need to be considered as part of the detailed design stuff and development of the building consent.
Sure.
Councillor Compton, you finished? Councillor McCann.
I feel like I've jumped the queue, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to answer. Anyway, through you, Mr. Mayor, what have we currently spent on the proposal? Do we have a ballpark figure?
Not off the top of my head, no, sorry.
Given that answer, are most of those costs recoverable if the project is greenlit?
Be able to be capitalised, yes.
And if the project is not greenlit, then those costs that we don't get them back. They've been already spent and have been already allocated through the approvals that we gave previously.
That's my understanding, yes.
Yeah. Councillor Compton's line of questioning may have covered this. I have been concerned by some of the issues raised from members of the public about the resource consent application. Are there any concerns that council has, given that we've been informed that there are a number of areas where the application might trigger non-compliance?
So a non-complying activity or activity status of non-complying is one of 5 different activity statuses under the Resource Management Act. It doesn't mean you can't apply for consent. It doesn't mean it automatically requires notification. There are a couple of additional thresholds that need to be met through the resource consent process, but that will be considered through the regulatory team's work, and it's specified in the Resource Management Act. So there's a statutory process that needs to be very carefully stepped through over that side. It's not something that, from the project management side of things, we're involved in at all.
Would council not making a decision on which of the 3 options to proceed assist with the smoothing out of that process?
My understanding is that it wouldn't make a difference at this point in time.
The next item, I'm sorry, Mr. CE, is we've had a previous discussion about the process of this project, and I think there's a general feeling from councillors and certainly from the public that this hasn't been ideal. Could you enlighten the councillors about that discussion and what the standard process is, and then with the permission of the Mayor we might have some questions that focus around that?
Yep, I mean, there's a fair question given the discussion we've had. I think the Chief Executive will have an answer for that, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so for I think all the time I've been at this council, we have an approach of peer reviewing projects and initiatives, call them case studies really, that have had significant impacts, whether good or bad. Obviously, a lot of focus goes on ones that haven't gone as well as you would like, so that we can make sure we learn some lessons. That has already been initiated for this. I don't think that would be a surprise to anyone that regardless of whether you agree or disagree with the commentary, there is a need to make sure it is objectively and independently reviewed. So we've initiated a process of procurement to undertake that review.
And just on that, through you, Mr. Mayor, will councillors get to see the terms of that reference so that we can be assured that we are reviewing what we as councillors have heard?
Look, I'm sure as part of good practice we'll show you what we're doing, but fundamentally, you know, the key bit for you is getting the review back and being comfortable that it has addressed everything you want.
And the key points I heard from you are that it is independent, and I'm going to struggle with the words because there will be processes and or people involved. This might be something that is that is not made public, or
If I go back to 2014, Richard Fowler and Sylvia Allen delivered a significant bit of feedback about some of our work. Wasn't that nice to sit through? We didn't keep it from the public. It was very important that they saw that, warts and all. So I'd like to give you assurance that that's the point of these things, so that people can be assured that we're always trying to learn and do better. Smaller initiatives we would review internally as a rule. Bigger ones, and we would put this in that category because of the amount of interest from people about how it's gone. We should definitely look for an outside party to review it. But you've got to bear in mind there's a cost involved with that. So that's the trade-off.
Just on that, Councillor, we know we had one on the Clean Tech Centre, the library more recently. These are big ones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did note that there might be other questions around this, because one of the key messages that we've heard in the working group has been the process and the project. For many members of the community, they are not able to separate those two out, and whether that's valid or not is up to them. But I wonder if we might, and I'm just making a suggestion to be helpful, have an opportunity for councillors to talk about whether what's been proposed by the CE is acceptable regarding a review. I'm certainly very comfortable with what I've been told, but I think because of what we've heard, we might spend a few minutes on that issue.
I think that's a separate process. We are dealing with this particular report. Once this business is done, then certainly. Have you got any other questions to staff?
I'm going to give some people an opportunity, because I know that Councillor Coots has some things that...
It's Councillor Randall, actually.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Significance and engagement policy is not considered to meet the thresholds, but during the week I received 130 emails, and I replied to each one individually. It took up the whole week on that, and I've never received so many emails from a matter like this, and I think therefore it should be considered significant. That's the first point. Second point is towards the legal advisor, Tim. You mentioned that the survey that the parties conducted...
Councillor Randall, have you got a question?
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair. The question is, the survey that was that the office, Tim has said contained errors. I would like him to expand what were the errors that he mentioned. He never specified, he just said it contained errors, but he never specified the errors.
So if I start, so it was a petition put up on Change.org, which I think is what we're all referring to, and there was it's been traversed previously in terms of the accuracy of some of the information that was initially on that survey, and whether or not some of the information was modified over time. So some of the information it contained included $800,000 estimated annual running costs. The contribution towards the rates rises was based as I think it was asked of a question earlier on of Sharon Hunter. She indicated she was using information that she believed was accurate at the time, and I think the important thing to be bearing in mind here is people were signing that petition based on that brief, and if there were inaccuracies in it, then I don't think necessarily the number of signatories can be relied upon as being a fair and accurate representation of the level of opposition.
Councillor Coates.
So bear with me, it's no surprise I've got a number of questions, but I'll quick fire them. So talking to the Jeff Cannon report, there is sorry, they're not numbered pages. One of the pages, it says, for this reason it is recommended that the roundabout area be included within the project area. Could staff explain what that reference, I've seen the map, it's referring to?
And unfortunately, Sean is not in the room at the moment, and he's probably the best
So we come back to that
person
one.
to be answering that.
So the next one is around the summary of management plan and development plans, and at the bottom paragraph there it says, talks about the Gateway Centre, guidance, key elements. It says future consultation requirements, and these must be considered in any future development. So it goes back to the question of Councillor Compton, I think, and it also talks further on in terms of the management plan. So on a further page it says potential misalignment with the Mclean Park management plan, and it states that there's no commercial activity will duplicate another facility in the vicinity, and then it refers to that it being unclear, and that public consultation is 3 to 4 years old. There could be a different view within the community now. So I'm interested in terms of whether there's a requirement to further consult, or if that's only if we do F&B, or not at all.
So I think that's in relation to commercial activities and there being some criteria which need to be met. And I'm sorry, I don't have. I've had a computer meltdown, so I don't have the report with me, so I can't quite give you an exact answer at the moment. So it is about making sure that those activities fall within the criteria that's set out within the management plan. And that's part of the further assessment he indicated would need to be done, and we need to do that once we've worked out what the functions would be.
Okay. So the next one is around, it says here to determine if the proposed commercial activities, which include a gallery, gift shop, meet these criteria, and an independent assessment would need to be undertaken. Is that referring to the consent application, and that would be considered independently? Yeah, it says it's page number 13 on the numbers, the pages aren't actually numbered. Number 4 has council, just above number 4, has council consulted on any plan development. It's in the paragraph above that. Below number 3, 8H. Determine the proposed commercial activities. Yeah, an independent assessment would need to be undertaken. So is that referring to the resource consent?
No, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be referring to the resource consent. It would be referring to a more detailed assessment that would need to be done in relation to the management plan.
So, and I'm sorry to labour the point, but it refers to an independent assessment. So would council then contract someone to do an independent assessment on the commercial activity relating to the management plan?
Yes.
Okay. So sorry, there's a lot to get through here. On the below that, it says, has council consulted on any plan development or commercial activity? And it says, notwithstanding point 3, the plan sets out a clear requirement for council to engage with key stakeholders, key partners, iwi, and the community before formalising any decision in relation to future facilities and granting any lease or licence. Can I be really clear? Sorry, it says in the case of granting a lease or licence, the act is clear that the council must, and it goes on to talk about that. Is what council's saying is that they have done that now in terms of the process up to date, in terms of the stakeholder groups engagement and so forth, or is what that's stating there that would come after a decision?
So I think that goes back to the point that that was made previously in terms of the public notification of a lease or licence.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense then. All right, and so then further on it says, it talks about the conditions and thresholds outlined in the plans. Again, this is under findings, and it said fundamental to these conditions and thresholds is the importance of continuing to engage and consult with key stakeholders. So could staff just explain how in practice that would work if it was to proceed?
So this is part of the further work that needs to be done as part of the detailed development design and detailed design stage. So there would need to be an engagement plan developed as part of that work. So again, it's kind of coming back to where we're at in the process right now. Is we've got a concept plan, and we've got a key decision that needs to be made now as to whether or not the council wants us to go on and carry on with that further work.
Thank you. And the last question on this report was around the page 10, where it refers to, because Sean's back in the room, they recommended that the roundabout area be included within the project area. And I just wondered what the reference of that was. And I know there was some earlier thought around utilising the land there to help with issues around, I think it was around parking and so forth. So I'm just surprised to see it in Jeff's report. So that is under the picture of the Mclean Park Management Plan, below the heading Mclean Park Development Plan, Duck Development Plan.
What's your question on that one?
Given there's quite a big question mark around the impact on parking and the area there, I was surprised to see that Jeff has said that it is recommended that the roundabout area on the eastern side of the Paraparaumu Boating Club is included within the project area. I'm just wondering how that relates to this project. I recall it came up in the Mclean Park discussion.
So through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, that's the only thing that I could see that would bring that into that discussion would be the overlap from that conversation around the management plan and what might be involved in terms of access. I think there was some talk about either adjusting the size of the roundabout or moving it to provide access when they were looking at, I think, the boat club option. There was an issue there around access in, and then there was parking complications, and at that time there was a suggestion that you could look to move or to, in the future, replace the roundabout, I think, with traffic lights, or there's some discussion on that. So that may be one reason why it remains in there potentially in terms of the future plan. But in terms of the current proposal, I don't believe, although you will have to take account of access into the building, that's significant distance away from the roundabout itself. So that was the only reason why I could see that it's in there.
Okay, thank you. Look, I've got further questions, Your Worship, but if I could allow other members to speak and then come back around the body of the report.
Councillor Braganov.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have 3 lines of questioning. The first one relates to following on the question from Councillor Elliott on page 8, which is and bullet point or point 16. So it talks about, so she mentioned these 20 car parks. It says increased capacity with more efficient use of those 20 car parks. So how many extra car parks are being provided there, or is there not actually any increase?
The car park on the corner of Mclean Street? Yeah, so at the moment it's an unformed car park that's used inefficiently. So I'd hesitate to put a number on how many cars use it at present,
Okay.
but the plan that's been done would look at forming up 20 parks in there, so a much more efficient use of the space.
Okay, thank you. And then if we go on to bullet or paragraph 18, in there it makes a comment about we do not have reliable data on visitation numbers to the district. But then on page 73 in the PwC report, it actually says that 80% of the visitors are to Kāpiti, which means 20% are to the rest of the district. And so based on some of the comments that were made earlier on, particularly by Sharon, saying that if 80% of the visitors who are coming to Kāpiti basically spend no time in the area, they go straight on their boat out, come straight back and then disappear again, any usage of that building outside the time is actually going to be very, very limited. Is that a fair comment?
Councillor, you seem to be confusing 2 different things. We don't have data on how many visitors come to Kāpiti. That's very different from the data that exists on how many people go to the island and where they come from. So the 80-20, as I understand it, is relating to visitors to the island. That first comment was, we don't know how many visitors come to Kāpiti and what they do when they're here.
So I'll just find the page in the report. Page 35. With Kāpiti Island being the region's key strategic visitor asset and responsible for around 80% of visitor numbers. That's what the report says. So, so if you're saying that we don't have the numbers, is that information not as accurate as it could be?
I can only tell you what I just said, Councillor, so there are two different bits of information being done here. I can't speak to the report writer's intent for page 35, sorry.
Okay.
You should have asked
So,
PwC.
I suppose, well, so we also heard earlier on that they were provided, this report has been based on what has been provided to them by KCDC, so they must have got those numbers from somewhere. So, the other other point that I wanted to raise in that report is on page 27. It talks about, it mentions, the very bottom of the page here, that the gateway is going to be the south side of the stream. And when you actually look at the management plan, it actually shows the position of the gateway on the northern side of the stream. And I'm just wondering whether the management plan map is incorrect, or whether, or what's actually happening there.
So I'll pass over to Darren in case there's anything else that he wants to add, but my understanding was that was something that changed through the consultation process, and the area that was allocated was expanded to include the south side as a result of the feedback received.
Yeah. So so the management plan is the final version of the management plan. So I don't understand why it's in the position that it is in.
So I suppose what it shows in the plan is that the space where the Gateway Centre could be was adjusted to include the south side.
It's very clearly on the north side.
In terms of the footprint.
It's very clearly on the north side. So I suppose based on that, then, if it's not consistent with the management plan, is that some type? Does that need to be consulted on as well? The position of where the gateway essentially would go.
This was covered in the report by Jeff Canham, who believes it's not inconsistent, not misaligned with the management plan.
So if you bear with me, so they say that it's on the south side, whereas the management plan shows quite clearly it's on the north side. So I'm not sure whether they've actually got the correct information about where it actually shown on the plan.
So in terms of, I've just been advised that the published plan includes very clearly the south side is the location for the... So it's making sure it's from the Pacific.
Right there.
So it's making, so this is the...
So this is the stream,
Yeah,
here.
so it's bringing it into the space here.
The
So
A, if you look at the thing, A. Gateway building.
it's supposed to be the whole space.
It's not accurate then.
The legend doesn't show where it's going.
It says it's actually got a position on the map.
It's not the point.
No.
Indicative.
So then, it's not accurate.
It's within the area.
So the information we've had from Alison Law, the Parks and Recreation Manager who was involved in the development of the plan, is that the plan includes the south side
Page 30.
as a location for the gateway.
A. And this is the final version.
You look,
So it is accurate being on the south side. Initially it wasn't consulted, it was only consulted on the north side, but at its request, it was changed to include the south side of the stream.
So as I said, this is actually the final version of the management plan. It shows very clearly that it's on the north side.
And these are the same people who are complaining now about the
yeah,
site.
but that's not going to make it fine. Yeah, That's fine. Have you got any other questions?
Look, I was just going to clarify the point that you're saying there. So this is actually covered this morning by the submissions. So initially in the plan, the options were 1, 2 and 3. They were all on the northern side of the stream. The submissions that came back in pushed for the ability to have it on the south side of the stream, so the boundary lines were changed. I think you'll find there's a dotted line on that map, and the boundary lines were changed to allow for it to go. So you won't see a building on there as such, but I think I was looking at this last night. The dotted lines allow for it to be done on the south side of the stream. Those submissions that were put in 2017 basically pushed that to happen. So that the conversation could be had about putting something on the south side of the stream. It didn't stop the TRC report looking at the boat club, and that's why the boat club was able to give the recommendation for it to go on the south side of the stream. That was the impression that I had.
Thank you very much.
So you are correct.
Councillor Coates, you've got another question.
It's not a question. If you want me to clarify, was the councillor that moved? Would you like me to clarify? So at the time, the feedback from submitters, and we've got copies of the submission, was to expand. So if you look at the map that you're referring to, there's Project Area C, Project Area B, and Project Area A, and each area is delineated by a dotted line. And the request from submitters was to expand Project Area A to allow for consideration for the gateway to be on the southern side of the stream. So the A1 box that you see is not the actual physical building, it's the legend. And if you read the comment says, support a collaboratively developed visitor gateway, Kāpiti Island Gateway building in this project area. The project area being Project Area A. And so from the dotted line, which is on the southern side of the car park, through to the end of the Paraparimi Boating Club, which allowed scope for that whole site to be considered for a gateway, whether it be in the boating club or whether it be on the southern side of the stream. It's the Mclean Park Management Plan that you were referring to. So it's Project Area A, titled the Gateway, and A1.
The Implementation Plan 2020 to 23.
So hopefully that's helpful to understand, and just put that one to bed.
Okay, Councillor Prabanov, I think offline that can be sorted out. Have you got another question? Else, Councillor Coates, you had further questions.
Yeah. So, Your Worship, I had questions from the report now. Just didn't want to hog the elected member time. So, number 16, page 8 of the report. This does partly go to the discussion around the size of the building and whether it's too big or too small, and also the purpose that the building serves. So it says there, whilst the Kāpiti Gateway will include visitor information about the entire district, will also serve as a visitor centre for Kāpiti Island. My concern is, and the question is, will there be sufficient space to actually do justice to providing information to the likes of Ngā Manu, Southwoods, Māori land, and so forth? Because I'm hearing conflicting stories around there's not enough space to actually do that. And as a follow-up, would there be sufficiently qualified or trained staff to be able to provide that information and associated brochures and information and so forth, whether it be digital or so forth? I just want to have a reassurance, if it is to proceed, that it will actually serve the purpose of a visitor information / destination centre.
A very small one. So
is the question is it too small that it won't actually achieve the task that it's set out?
This is a stepping stone, and within the constraints of the footprint and the things that it's trying to do, there is only something like 235 square metres of space, and then the deck has more, of course. It was felt that to go bigger would not be appropriate for the location, really. And as we've always said, this is not going to deliver everything for everybody. It is a very small but significant starting point. And, compared to the 2013 $13 million option, one of the clear drivers has been come in with something that's fit for purpose as a starting point. We've heard that we're not the biggest tourist destination in the country, and yet we want to improve. So this is a starting point. And I have said to you a number of times, I don't want to overplay that this is going to solve all things for all parties. It is not, but it is a great stepping off point.
Thank you. And I guess I partly asked that question as from a district-wide perspective in terms of the funding district-wide.
Yeah, to just add to that, I think it's the use of technology as well. So making sure, there's a number of boards that are important to the outside sort of area to make sure that we can use technology to help tell the story as well. And that was part of the thing about making sure it wasn't just the building, it's the whole way it integrates the park and it tells the stories, and those include telling the stories of other destinations as well. So a big use of technology is part of the proposal as well.
Thank you, Darren. Which does lead to the other question. Another question that I had was will the facility be supported by a website with information around the facility and the other attractions and so forth? And if so, is that included within the budget?
So that's a big part of why we're doing the wider destination plan, to make sure that these things do integrate together. We already have existing websites and those sorts of tools in place. It's about making sure that these tools work together and they're not isolated projects.
Thank you. My next question is on number 30 around the biosecurity fees. And we've heard very clearly from one of the operators that they're concerned that the charges could jeopardise the viability of their business. We have obviously some other potential amendments later that may address this in some way, but how would this be assessed against the impact of the operators and any impact on demand? So moving forward, how are we going to, looking at those user charges, how are we going to assess, especially if we need to be working with the operators?
So you mean in terms of the proposal to start at a $4 fee and then incrementally work up every 2 years, provided it's not impacting the numbers?
So say, for example, we find that the operators aren't seeing the numbers that we were proposing, and I'm just wondering how that's going to be assessed, and basically, how's that going to be assessed?
Yeah, so the methodology is yet to be worked out, but it would need to be something quite simple in order to be effective.
And in collaboration with the operators?
Yeah, it would need to be in collaboration with the operators.
Okay, thank you. The next one is, I don't have that many more, Mr. Mayor. Next one is, so point number 57 on page 13 around other funding opportunities. How confident are we that we may secure, and I'm not asking for staff to commit to, but is there a high level of confidence, a low level of confidence that other funding is available?
Look, I think this is one of those areas where it's still actually yet to be clear how COVID has impacted on the availability of a range of different alternative funding sources.
Okay, and I've got...
I think the team have been doing work to understand how we fit in criteria for different funds, and they have found a number of places where we could apply for funding. They wouldn't want to do anything like that in terms of progress any further until there's a clear direction from the council.
Two final questions. One was around the car parking. I note in the Mclean Park Management Plan there's some alterations to the parking at the southern end of the park. Does that net any gains in terms of additional parking, or is there an opportunity to... It looks like the merger of two parks into one.
That's probably more... I'm just looking at Sean and see whether he can answer that question, or otherwise it's probably more of a question for the specific staff who are involved in the management plan development.
Yeah, so I guess the current program is to look at parking right through Mclean Street and Papurumi Beach as part of an overarching project within both access and transport in conjunction with the management plan. So that option's probably more of a long-term proposal, but needs to be considered as part of the wider parking issues around that area that we're currently looking at. So it wouldn't be done in conjunction with this particular project, but it's definitely something we're thinking about in terms of longer term in and around that area because of some of the other issues with parking down there.
Thank you, Sean. And the last one, which obviously you've heard a few questions from me today about, is around the flipping building size. Did council say the building needs to be 160 square metres, or how did we arrive to the building was too big, the building's too small? I've seen the brief to the architects which outlined specific requirements around the biosecurity. We have also heard as elected members that footprint is the footprint, but that the internal design can change a little bit depending. Does that include the biosecurity, or can it not be any smaller than what is in the proposal.
So there were some base requirements, but there is some flexibility within that. So the base proposal was for approximately a 90 square metre biosecurity quarantine area inside 160 square metre pod, which also provides check-in officers, toilets and storage facilities. So the 160 isn't purely biosecurity, it's for some other functions as well.
So what else does it include?
Check-in officers for the operators, and some storage facilities as well.
To the so with the officers that are available there for and either of the operators may choose to lease them, the question is relating to the staff that would be out front selling the product. Would they be selling the product of the operators that are in the offices? So essentially, would the visitor destination staff that are manning that smaller site be selling the tickets to the operators that are actually occupying the site as well? Because I know from talking with them, they have issues with the fact that other people would be selling their product. Is that question clear?
Yeah, I think it's part of the whole thing that needs to be worked through. Obviously, we wouldn't want to duplicate activity if that activity was already going on, but we wouldn't want to miss the opportunity to sell product if it could occur through the council.
Okay, so just to be clear, we're talking about them selling the product that the company offers, so chores to the island.
If the operators weren't there or something like that, I suppose it's making sure that there's not the opportunity missed if someone wants to
make a booking.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, team.
That's in
Councillor
agreement
Hurley.
with the operators.
I'll just ask a few questions, but just actually building a little bit on what Councillor Coots was talking about with regards to car parking. I noticed in the Price Waterhouse report there was, sorry, not in the Price Waterhouse report, I was looking at number 15 on page 8 in regards to putting a time limit on the car parks in that car park that's being used for the gateway. If there is a time limit on there, then that pretty much will precludes all people that are going to Kāpiti Island to park there. It was recommended, point 15, it was recommended that the remaining car parks on the site be time limited to ensure usage by visitors to Mclean Park and beach users is prioritised. So why would anyone going to Kāpiti Island park there?
Hold on. The question has been directed to
my
staff.
apologies.
Staff will respond.
So that corresponds with the proposal to look at the commercial development for long-term stay or overnight parks in conjunction with the golf club at that site there. So that would be where Kāpiti Island visitors would be directed to stay if there was a decision to go down this route.
Just clarifying, that's the proposal for the golf club is for a paid car parking, is that right?
Yes, it will be a commercial arrangement.
So any person that didn't want to park and just stay during the day, they would have to park somewhere else down on the waterfront. So basically, we're taking away 30, just clarifying, we're looking at fundamentally removing 32 car parks from that area.
No, it depends on the time limited parking. So time limited parking means that people are able to still park there, and there's no recommendation made as to what that time limited parking would be.
It would be fair to think that it would be about a 6 or 7 hour stay in regards to going to Kāpiti Island. So I would think that if it was a time limit park, you're talking a shorter time. Well, I would assume it would be a short time frame, so that you're turning over, according to this, so you're turning over visitors to Mclean Park. Currently, people will park in there for the duration of their stay. They're there for 7 or 8 hours. So we're pushing those people out into the other parks around the area.
Yes, or they'd have the option to be parking in a commercial arrangement if that comes to fruition in the golf club.
Okay. On page 56, there is it talks to a 10% commission on ticket sales. This is in the Price Waterhouse Coopers report with regards to revenue, potential revenue. Does this? Is there any assumption, or what's the assumption that's been made with regards to that 10% commission figure in regards to the revenue streams? Is it assuming that that's going to be basically all ticket sales are going to have to go through the through the gateway, if you like, or is it assuming a percentage of them will go through the gateway? I'm just curious for how that's going to impact on the income.
So in terms of the specifics behind that assumption, it's probably a question for PricewaterhouseCoopers, but the intent, my understanding is it wouldn't be that 100% of the ticket sales would have that commission applied to them. It would only be those that might be, for example, sold through the gateway office, the staffing that Darren talked about before, the opportunity to not miss out on sales. Yeah.
So the figure that's being used, isn't it, from an income stream perspective, is a small one, not a larger one?
That's correct, and I think it's, the 10% is based on what's standard practice in the industry. Okay.
The reason I'm wanting to look at how these small things, are going to impact on the cost, if you like, is I just note on page 62 of the Pricewaterhouse report, it's got some charts there, and the chart on the right-hand side talks to whether council's receiving 100% of the revenue that's been predicted, council gets 75% of the revenue that's been predicted, or 50% of the revenue. And there's some quite substantial changes in timeframes. If we only get 75%, I think break-even point goes out to something like 19 odd years. So if I guess what I'm saying is if we don't achieve the figures that we're talking about, that will basically impact on the break-even point time, unless we counter that with funding from somewhere else.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
I suppose this is why the council officers have been looking at different sources of income to minimise risk and make sure that we're not reliant on any one particular source. If we can understand the different income streams, and we can also understand potentially other ways of getting revenue, it's about trying to minimise that risk.
Cool. I'll actually just go back to the start of my list, actually, because I was just bouncing around a little bit there. On number 4, we talked into we resolved at the last council meeting of point 72, was that the council notes once a PGF application is approved and detailed design is confirmed, that we have an idea of the council notes the office will provide reprioritised CapEx budgets for the council's share of the development costs. Once a PGF application is approved and detailed design is confirmed, including construction deadlines. Because that was a motion in regards to the last meeting we had about 9 months ago, would we have had an expectation that should have been completed within that time frame, or is that something that's just going to be done when we get to that point?
No, the resolution talks about once detailed design is confirmed, we're not going through with the detailed design until we understand whether or not there's a decision around the council to support the proposal from here.
Okay. Number 12, page 7, refers to that we're 120 days behind in this project. During this process, the CEO's commented that we were fine on time. And it's somewhat similar to the discussion we had last time, where we've ended up on a tight time frame to make a decision again. Is there any reasoning why we're behind? And what's the reasoning why we're behind our time schedule in regards to that?
So it was necessary to do the further work in terms of the various operating models and give PwC the time that they needed to do their review.
Councillor, was that your request? You asked us to do more work and then allow some time so that you could seek stakeholder feedback. So we have adjusted to enable that.
Right. I wasn't aware that we asked for more work. I thought with the working group, we were at the stage where we were under the impression that we'd done the work, and then you elected to get Pricewaterhouse to check over the work because you weren't happy with the information that came out from that working group. That was a conversation we had in a room out back. Is that not correct? Okay. Back in on it. I'm just curious, with the prices that we're talking with regards to the concessionary, have we made the allowances been made again for the costings for that to be an additional cost or an absorbed cost?
It's been included as revenue through the PwC work.
Right. Okay. I'll just leave that for the moment. I'll let some others ask some questions and I'll come back. Oh,
You got
sorry.
more questions? No. Councillor.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, I note that the business case we've got before us today is significantly different in terms of the economic benefits that were pitched to the Provincial Growth Fund back when this was sent in June. And there's a couple of points where they're talking about the upper end of limit. This is in the PGF application of 16.26 million and employment of 72 persons. And I think we're looking at maybe about 2/3 of that now. So have we gone back to the Provincial Development Unit to check that they're still happy with the project, given the significant shift in the visitor numbers that we've used to calculate it, and obviously that change in the monetary figures in it?
We haven't at this stage, because the next stage is for this decision to be made here in order to sign up to the agreement with the government.
So the view is that we would go back to the Provincial Development Unit after this, or not?
So, Councillor, just want to remind you that they shifted it into the shovel-ready projects, which has different criteria. So that business case that went forward was addressing the criteria for the PGF funds, and it got shifted to shovel-ready, which was about, can you create jobs by building stuff, basically. That was their decision to do that. So the two criteria they required are the two that are in front of you today for decision. So at that point, we'll go back to them and say there either is a project that we want to put shovel in the ground or not. That'll be based on your decision.
So just to clarify, the business case with the figures that we've got in front of us at the moment is what went to shovel-ready?
No, the proposal that we put to them, they shifted to shovel-ready.
No, but I mean, in terms of you were talking about the figures in terms of what they made their decision of, or is that still the
It wasn't, as I say, once it went to shovel-ready, it was no longer so much about what's the long-term economic benefits. It was about getting shovel in the ground today, and that's why they felt it would be a faster decision. So, interestingly, I'm not sure if it is.
Fair point.
Right, anybody else? Nobody else? So I'm looking at the recommendations. I'm going to take them one after the other, and I understand Councillor Rob McCann has recently. I've had one foreshadow already from Rob McCann, but I'm going to take each one by itself. But you've got one? Rob.
Apologies for being a bit slow. I'm feeling weary. So I have foreshadowed that I believe that we need to separate the green light, red light approach to the project from the three options, and I think I've outlined why, because I believe that there's more information that will come to light from Council. Council's still got some consultation and work to do, and I think it provides a much safer option and allows Council to react accordingly when that information comes in. So I have already provided that, which you can see up there as alternative 8.1.
Right, can we just park that there? And no, can we just park that there? And I want to look at the first recommendation 78. I mean, that's fairly, let's move that along.
I'm happy to move that.
Okay. Recommendation 78 moved by Janet Holbrook, seconded by Jackie Elliott. Right of intro.
So for those in the room who don't have an agenda in front of them, this is the recommendation that notes that further work has been undertaken to consider feedback and assess options.
Right. Any debate? No?
I'm going to say something, if that's all through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
That I think this is really important because councillors listened to the community, and a working group was formed and spent a considerable amount of time looking at every aspect that we could understand of the project and put forward a number of recommendations, many of which have made it into the business plan. So while there are elements of the community that say we haven't listened, there was an extensive process of listening and reacting and putting forward solutions that we thought dealt with the problems that were raised. So that's not really a debate, but just...
I'll go for a right of reply on that, and I just want to...
Anybody else? Hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Coates.
Look, I guess I wanted to acknowledge the work that the working group has done and say from an outsider not involved in the working group, certainly the comments that I heard from individuals with concerns around the project, I then heard relayed from feedback from the Gateway working group members. And why I'm referring to that is that it certainly, as Rob has said, was listened to, that feedback was through. And I remember having a discussion with someone saying, well, funny you've said it, I literally heard that from talking with Rob today. So I can assure you that feedback has been passed on. And certainly the model that we see here today is vastly, has been considerably changed based on that feedback. And so certainly from my perspective, a lot of that feedback through all of the Gateway group members was taken into account and fed into the process. And just acknowledge the work and the hours that you all put into it.
Councillor Elliott.
Yes, again, and I did mention this briefly last week, but I wanted to take the opportunity to thank all of you working group members, my colleagues. You have added value to the role of elected member. I truly believe in Kāpiti and certainly so much value to this project. Thank you.
Right of reply.
Yeah, I actually particularly want to thank Councillor Mclean, who's taken quite a leadership role in this engagement process. So. And also the other members of the working group. It's been quite a lot of hours, and also staff who've had to go away and do quite a lot of extra work, and also acknowledge the work that's been done by PricewaterhouseCoopers. I think it's a good piece of work. And we've certainly got much more information on which to base our decision than we had, 100 and something days ago. So thanks a lot.
Right. Recommendation 78. Moved by Councillor Holbrook, seconded by Councillor Elliott. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? You want that recorded? No?
He said yes.
You said yes? Oh, that will be recorded. And Councillor Randall. Carried. Recommendation 79.
Similar one, so I'm happy to move that one as well.
Can I get a second? Okay. Right of intro? No. Debate? No. So, recommendation 79 moved by Councillor Holbrook, seconded by Councillor Elliott. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? Recorded, Councillor Crompton and Councillor Randall. Carried. Recommendation 80. Can I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Buswell. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Sophie Elliott.
Hanford.
Oh, Hanford. It's a long day. Gee, you white fellows all look like. Any debate on this? No?
Yes, I've got my light on. But
Councillor Holbrook.
introduction first.
You want right of introduction?
Thank you. I would just like to express my opinion about what happened in the chambers today. It was hugely moving to see all our three iwi basically holding hands together to further this community project, and it is something that I believe that this council has been striving to do for quite some time. And in my 4 years as a councillor, I have to say how profound that was today to see the collaboration between our three iwi. And you know, it's a really special part of the Kāpiti Coast, and I think that this is absolutely fitting to have this name bestowed on something that will be a treasure for not only our local Māori but also our the rest of the community. It's really, really important, and I'm pleased to see that we've taken these steps to work together with iwi, and it also is part of what came out of our independent review, that we need to be working more collaboratively together, and it just really heartens me to see progress in that area.
Anybody else?
Yes.
Councillor Holbrook.
Yeah, so I'd like to talk all that and also say that it's really important to acknowledge, as we heard today, that this name has mana. It's not just a label. It's something that's mana enhancing, and it's also something that has intrinsic mana. And I would encourage all councillors, even if they vote against the other recommendations, to recognise that and vote for this recommendation.
Councillor Elliott.
Thanks. Look, there'd been a special request for me to put together a wee history of the name Te Urihi for today. It turned into a few pages, and frankly, I think we've all had enough. So I might go and see Chris Gorgeous and learn how to carve an old carpet in wood one day, but at some point I'll write this up and share it with you all.
Councillor Halliday.
I'd like to also acknowledge the name Te Urihi, but I do want to, and the fact that we are working together in this space, but I would also like to acknowledge Chris Webber's words with regards to there needs to be some looking into this area, with regards to how we move forward in the future. I think Chris was not disingenuous. I think there was a real want to make sure that we're getting the right representation that we want across the district. That's all I wanted to say on that.
Councillor Compton.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Councillor Halliday said. I think, absolutely, what Councillor Holbrook said as well. It's important to acknowledge the importance of the gift of this name, regardless of what our views might be elsewhere. But as Councillor Halliday said, there's some important issues that Council needs to work through, and the iwi need to work through in their own internal processes, and that's creating tensions that are starting to come to this table. And I think as elected members, we can't ignore them. But I think as the Mayor and others have noted, we have to be mindful about how we navigate them, given that we do have the memorandum of, we have that partnership agreement with the iwi, so we need to do better. But absolutely agree with the comments about from Councillor Buswell and Holbrook about acknowledging the mana of the name that's been gifted.
Councillor Coates. Oh, sorry, Councillor Hanford.
I'd also like to talk with that and also add to the sentiment of the fact that our rangatahi Māori, if we greenlight this, will then be seeing that Te Urihi, that name further embedded into our community, and also hopefully it sets the precedent for more Te Reo Māori to be used throughout our community and in the names of projects that we're working on. So a huge thank you to Te Atiawa ki Whakarongotai Ngāti Tō Rangatira for gifting this name and the mana that comes with it. So it's a real privilege to be on the receiving end of that as a council, I think, and we should not underestimate the significance of that.
Councillor Coates.
Yeah, look, I don't disagree with what's been said, but want to come to it from a different perspective than anyone's mentioned. And I leaned across to Councillor Buswell and said it just after the end of the haka. That's an example of what you can expect on the site when they talk about telling the story. How moving that was. I know not everyone in the room appreciated it, but certainly most of us did. And that gives you an insight into what can be done in creating a world-class experience for people coming to Kāpiti. That for me was certainly a moment that I won't forget in this chamber. There are others, but that one probably stands out as a better one. And certainly acknowledge the three iwi coming together. And look forward to seeing what can be achieved in telling their rich history and story.
Can I just say that not too many weeks ago we were similarly talking about the contributions and the importance of the partnership and the growing power of EV in terms of reclaiming the ancestral rights here, right around this table, when we were talking about the coastal assessment panel. I was heartened because over the years I've sat around here, both as a reporter and as an elected member, and seen how the struggle has been for those people to achieve what their actual rights are. The issue that Chris Webber raised, those who have been sitting around the tribunal hearings when they listen to Tiatiawa would know the struggles that they've gone through, the land that they've lost, the spirit that's gone with that, and the alienation that has caused. What we saw this morning here was a claim to that, deeply seated into the very land that links this to an amazing icon, the island, which speaks to us. As you come back from work from Wellington, when you come over the Pukeroa Bay Hills and you see the island, you know you're home. This project is actually calling for that on this side. And they've given you the name. When I spoke to them and they were going to talking about this name, I said, look, you understand what it is when you want to give a name. You're digging into your ancestral beliefs and giving it as a gift. How many people in the mainstream or even people around this table understand that? I don't know. Therefore, when the gift is given, do we spit in their faces? This is a very strong term that I use. I apologize if that hurts you. But I've seen this before, and so I'm just saying. Anybody else? I now resolution number 80, moved by Councillor Buswell, seconded by Councillor Hanford. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? Thank you very much. Carried. Resolution 81, Councillor Rob McCann, to you. Yep.
I've proposed an alternative. I think I've spoken to it enough, Your Worship.
This alternative with a slight modification. I think we need to include the name that we've just accepted. So after project Te Uruhi. Has Rob, have you moved? So Rob's moved and I've suggested an alternative.
And the mover is happy with that? So,
maybe Te Uruhi first. What do you reckon?
We're getting there.
She's second.
So
Councillor
Rob
McCann moved.
He didn't actually.
Councillor Coates has a procedural question.
Hold on. Councillor Coates, you got a procedural question, I understand.
Your Worship, I'd had, not knowing how the vote was going to go today, I had two other motions that I was considering proposing. I want to just check with staff or with the Chief Executive. I think that they have been superseded by Councillor McCann's motion. However, they would still be relevant at a future point, and I just wanted to, if I could state them, and then just see whether they need to be voted on today, or whether we can bring them back at a further discussion should 81 get voted through.
Well,
so I'm in your hands in terms of...
Shall we press ahead then, and then you can raise that issue?
As long as I have the opportunity.
Yeah, you can give them the opportunity to raise them, and you can probably even enter them in the minute if you wish.
Yep. So we can do that once we've gone through this one.
Sure.
After this motion, yes.
Yep. So have we got that? If the motion seconded, moved by Councillor Mclean, seconded by Janet Holbrook. Right of intro.
So can I clarify with my fogged brain that I'm speaking to
The
changing
Yes.
the motion?
replacement.
Have we?
This is not a substantive motion.
Yeah, this is the substantive, councillor. The 81 that's in your report no longer exists.
Yeah.
This is the substantive because that's what you've moved.
Right.
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Slowly, we have time.
Thank you. I think this has been a very, very tough decision for councillors to make. And one of the questions that I raised today was, in the public speaking time, was do we vote for a project, or do we vote as to how we're told to vote? And the answer to my answer is that the information that we've been provided has changed over time, and we've been responsible for some of that change by ensuring that we've listened to the community, and the project has evolved, which I don't think is a bad thing, that projects evolve over time. The other thing that I've spoken to is that I believe that we have to be able to separate the process from the project. The project, we've seen a good amount of information, some of it not everyone will accept, paints some specific advantages based on our four well-beings, which the working group focused on, as opposed to just the economic benefits. Those have been clearly outlined, and even if you do not accept all of them, you'd have to accept that some of them exist. What has been confusing in the community is that many people want a gateway, they just don't want this gateway. And they would like us to hand the money back, but somehow they want everything that's been proposed to still be delivered. So as councillors, I think we're stuck in a bit of a hard place there, trying to match all of those requirements from our community and balance the budget, so to speak, because we've been given an opportunity for government funds which has to enhance the project unless we're wasting money. And from everything that I've read, we're trying to make sure that that money is well spent and develops a well-rounded project. The big negative that I worry about is that we have two businesses that we are affecting by creating a project which they may or may not have to buy into, and therefore pay a fee that goes to DOC based on this project. And I know that Councillor Cootes has got another motion that we might talk about, and I just foreshadowed that discussion, which is I still am concerned that with the volatile nature of our economy and tourism, that we should ensure that we protect those businesses who have been drawn into this discussion regardless of whether they wanted it or not, and we have to acknowledge just how difficult it has been for them. And I really do mean that, councillors. We have a very hard decision to make, and we've felt a lot of pressure from a lot of different parts of the community, but it is their livelihoods, and I hope they know that we've listened and that we have tried to make sure that this project supports them as much as possible. So I think it's one of the hardest decisions I've made, having regards to all of that information, the fact that it's evolved over time and occurred in a process that we haven't been, to use a phrase, the master of our own domain. The shovel-ready project and the process that entails is not something that we, as the tail, can wag. We have to either take part in these projects to get an opportunity from our community or not. And then after that, we had COVID-19. So while I have grave concerns about the process, and it has undermined a significant amount of support, potential support for the project, in my mind, I can separate the process from the project, and that's why I'm recommending that we vote for it.
Right, open for others. Councillor Holbrook.
Yes, that was an excellent opening statement and summarised quite well the challenges, very well, the challenges that we've faced with deciding whether or not to go through with this project. And that was one of the reasons where, in a Zoom meeting that went out on about as long as this one, we decided to go back, have more conversations, rework the business case, get some external advice, and that's made me much more comfortable today than I was then. I'd like to also acknowledge the stress that this has caused, particularly one of our local businesses, and I noticed that you're still in the room, Vicky and Glenn, and I'd like to acknowledge the stress that this has caused you, and rest assured we are not trying to ruin your business. We want to help in any way we can, and I'm sure we as elected members will be watching that and making sure that that happens, and there might be some suggestions about how that can happen coming up soon. As an elected member, I tend to take advice, and I've had advice today, more than advice, a strong statement from iwi, which I can't ignore. I've had advice from DOC about the viability and the necessity of this project. I've had advice from our excellent Kotahitanga Economic Development Board, who have been through a rigorous process of analysis, highly qualified people who we have mandated to help us make decisions just like this. And one of the pillars of what they are doing is developing our destination policy, of which this is a central part. As elected members, sometimes you do have to make decisions in the midst of a lot of noise and a lot of emotion, but sometimes it's necessary to see through that and past that and make the call that you know is the right one for your district. And for me, this is one of those days, and I'm very comfortable that we have the advice we need, we've given this due consideration, and I'll be voting in favour. Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Your Worship. As a Kāpiti Coaster, born and bred, I've grown up knowing the significance of that island out there to sea, and how genuinely lucky we are as a community to have it and to be living with it, and a clear understanding of the part that every single person in this community plays in the continued kaitiakitanga protection of the island, the marine reserve, and all the flora and the fauna within it. I've been really lucky enough to be a guide on the island for 6 years, and by all 3 tour businesses at the time, and they were really busy, and we were running for up to 9 months of the year. I was doing historical tours and learning from all 3 iwi along the way, which was a real experience, and it was a privilege. An owner-operator of Kāpiti Island Nature Tours, Mr. Barrett, just took the words out of my mouth today, as he always does, when he says that we have a third world biosecurity facility for our world-class nature reserve. It has, over those 6 years, been nothing short of completely and utterly embarrassing to have to tip out international visitors' bags on a car park, rain or shine, to check for pests, and knowing that we weren't doing the best job we could do. During that time, I want to mention too that there were 6 major changes brought to us as concessionaires and employees by DOC over that 6 years. There was a major change of the pricing. Then there was a review of that change at our desperate request. And then there was another major change again as part of bringing in new national policy. And then there were 2 more changes made at the request of us operators that meant that guides could work and operate totally with autonomy, that we designed and put together to DOC ourselves. And at that point, we were using the working relationship we had developed with DOC. And it was really important, and I guess it just showed that We developed resilience and we developed agility, and we'd made a decision that we were going to all work on this together. I'm a local with a passion for our history and our stories that become more amazing and rich with the peeling back of each layer. And we can ask ourselves, who are Hinia Popo and who is Kaheo Tarangi? We know them, but who is Ringi Uria Rakira? Her name should be up with theirs. She is another famous Kāpiti woman who swam off the island. All proud Kāpiti women. And we have no place to tell their stories, and it would be a delight to have that. There's been discussion on the Gateway for over 30 years. Many proposals that have cost anything up to $19 million, then $15 million, then $10 million. This is a fit-for-purpose functioning, removable, welcoming, cost-effective space to showcase the very best that the creative Kāpiti Coast has to offer, by providing fit-for-purpose biosecurity that I feel so important, and all in an enhanced natural environment. It was my original request that this process be delayed for a year so that Council had the opportunity to work further with the community to bring this project together and that everyone could celebrate it. But what I did discover when I tested this with Council is that we would be putting the government grant at risk, and that would be the cost. So there'll be no delay. It is here on the table today, and I would be clearly remiss not to totally agree to support this project.
Thank you. Councillor Compton.
Thank you. So one of the key concerns I've had about this project, going right back to last year, was around whether the business case for it could show that there was a meaningful benefit from to the district from its existence. And unfortunately, as I sit here today and from the discussions we've had around this table, those concerns still haven't been addressed. The first was admitted to councillors in our briefing last week, where there hasn't actually been any quantifying of any additional visitation to Kāpiti Island that would be caused by the Gateway's construction. So that means the 14,000 visitors, additional visitors that have been calculated by 2030, mentioned in the business case, and all those economic benefits that are being attributed to the Gateway from 2022 through them, they're actually economic benefits from that activity that we would get anyway without the Gateway. That figure of 92% growth over the next 9 years, it's clearly explained in the business case as being based off those pre-COVID years. And that growth was about over 20% a year without a Gateway. So that double-digit growth that we had without the Gateway, it shows that all these claims that we need to have a Gateway to drive growth, that's not the case. One of the key things that tourism operators keep saying is that it's around digital platforms, digital marketing. They keep saying it's something that we desperately need to do better. There's not a single piece of analysis in whether it's the report, the two economic impact assessments, or even the PwC thing that actually quantifies that additional visitation. And I mentioned today in my question to Neil Mackay about what about the economic uplift, and we've got an admission on our council website that we don't have the data to actually calculate that. So when this business case has been claiming, and it claims it throughout at multiple points, the additional benefits from the Gateway, the economic benefits, they're not. They are the benefits we get from those increased tourism numbers for Kāpiti Island that were going to happen anyway. So the question is, when you're assessing the economic viability of this, is what net benefit does it add over and above that growth? And that's not demonstrated anywhere. There are two pieces of information. I shouldn't say it's not demonstrated anywhere, because there are two pieces of information that are included in there that you could say are because of the Gateway's construction. And one of them is the 16 jobs created during the actual construction of that, and that's 16 jobs that we could create wherever we invested this money. And the other is the 3 jobs that would be created over the longer term from the operation of the Gateway Centre. So we're being asked to spend $4.4 million of ratepayers and taxpayers' money on something that is going to add 3 jobs effectively, because the business case doesn't demonstrate where that additional visitation, if it exists, it doesn't demonstrate the additional economic uplift. And so to my fellow councillors, I would say that when we're already looking at going out from our public workshops that included rate rises, we're looking at going out with a figure that's 8% rate rises. We need to be able to demonstrate to our public that we're getting value for dollar for every piece of their money that we spend. And when I look at this business case, I couldn't look anyone in the community in the face and say that that's the case. The more I look at it, the more it looks more like a toll gate on visitors to Kāpiti Island instead. And unlike Councillor Mclean, I would also put it to this table that as councillors, we cannot separate the process from the project, because the process is what has led to the advice and the recommendations and all the information we have before us today. They're intrinsically linked, they're not separate things. It's one of the most important roles we have as governors in this organisation, is to actually ensure that the processes that are being run with probity. And that's something that everyone agrees there's been issues with the process, and there's been additional concerns raised by members of the public today. So I cannot in good faith vote for a project that I cannot see delivering economic benefits that justify the other benefits that people have talked about. And I acknowledge the importance of this to iwi, and I acknowledge that it's one way to fulfil potential biosecurity options, but it's not the only way. And I was disappointed that to learn that DOC hasn't considered what could be more cost-effective options. And I can't vote for a process which, in my opinion, has seen the scrum screwed in a way that only the Wallabies could be proud of. In my opinion, there hasn't been an appropriate level of probity around this, and I feel that it needs to be investigated by the Auditor General.
Councillor Coates.
Yeah, look, I've been around a while and seen this gateway discussion in different shapes and forms, as Councillor Elliott has mentioned, and you've heard me refer to the review of the eyesights where it was mentioned back in 2012, 2013, so it's certainly not a new discussion to this community, although it's been in different shapes and forms. I've been pretty open that from a project perspective, I've been supportive of the concept of a visitor destination / gateway centre. Councils around the country fund in different ways those types of activities as core business and fund it directly via rates in many different communities, whether it be an eyesight, a visitor centre, or whatever. That's not unusual, and they're generally not run in a full cost recovery mode like many other of our services that we deliver to the community. So as I said to the Coopers when I met with them, even if we were discussing this just as a visitor destination centre, I would be supportive of the role or function that plays in terms of telling the story, promoting the district, and hence my questions earlier around whether it would be able to do that sufficiently. That being said, if I could vote on the process, I would vote against it, and if I could vote on the project, I would be voting for it. So I absolutely acknowledge the concerns around this table and within the community about the process, and I'm heartened to hear that already, and surprised actually that already the Chief Executive has initiated a review to see how we can do better in that space, and I'm sure elected members have their views around some of that as well. For me, I was certainly on the fence coming into this meeting today, but hearing, and particularly from Hilmari on the Kotahitanga board, having seen her at work some years ago through the Māori economic development stuff and some work she's done with this council, and having respect for her knowledge around the numbers. And the question, I acknowledge what Gwyn says, and in ways agree around if you didn't have the gateway, you would still see those projections. But the question that I put to Hilmari was, let's assume that those assumptions were wrong or out by some margin. Is there still benefits of the project to the district? And her response was yes. And those wider sort of flow-on benefits in terms of marketing the other aspects within the district and the story and the history and so forth. So I'm reluctantly in support of this project. I say reluctantly because it would have been better if we'd been able to take the community more with us. That being said, a lot of misinformation out there. But equally, I've never seen a more unified and powerful moment within this chamber with iwi coming together, sending a very clear signal that this is important to them. And so I will be voting for this. But that being said, I do have a couple of other motions that I'd like to be considered by the council that I will bring to the table at the end of this discussion.
Sorry, my microphone has gone flat. But I would like to also tautoko the comments that James has made coming into this, and I think I made this pretty clear. Hopefully everyone was aware that I was also on the fence. I definitely acknowledge Councillor Coots' comments too around the unfortunate situation that we're in now with the community not feeling like they've been taken along with us. And I think even personally I can accept, we can all, I mean, those conversations, you know, I could have had more, but ultimately I felt that widow so strongly from iwi this morning, so much so that I had to stand up and haka alongside them. And I think now to vote against this project, having felt so strongly in that moment and understanding the hurt and the pain, as Guru has mentioned, that our iwi partners have been through. I think as well the commitment to growing connection to Te Taiao, to our environment through greenlighting this project is really important, and hopefully that will then provide a greater motive for people to want to protect this one planet that we all share. So through being able to provide more opportunities for people to witness and embrace and enjoy our natural environment, hopefully we will see more people wanting to protect our planet. I think as well, with my portfolio hat on of climate change, having to recognise that climate justice means being in partnership with iwi and tangata whenua. Climate justice means reducing other inequalities and other inequities through our solutions to climate change. So through ensuring that we're alongside this journey, but also other journeys in the council space and in all spaces that we walk in life, that we're alongside tangata whenua is something that I will always hold tightly, and something that through Te Tiriti o Waitangi that we have a responsibility and obligation to honour. I'm feeling the mana, and I'm feeling like for my generation, hopefully this will be something that will be a legacy that we're leaving. And you know, it's a physical legacy. It's a legacy of stories. I don't believe you can put a price on those stories and that history. I don't believe you can put a price on Te Taiao and our environment and giving people the opportunity to enjoy and experience that. So ultimately, I hope that through voting for this, I am standing alongside other young people who are very much in support of the idea of having a gateway and of this sort to tell the stories of our tangata whenua, and would also just like to again acknowledge our iwi partners for their strong widow, I believe, to us to really honour that commitment to partnership and the commitment to tie out our environment.
Am I speaking?
No, Councillor Holiday.
I thought Angela was next.
Well, no, you popped up before on mine.
That was
You go first.
on his microphone.
Oh, okay.
So it is actually Councillor Buswell.
Councillor Buswell.
Thank you. I feel like I've been on a massive journey with this project, and I have spent many hours sitting down at the side of Te Tuku Stream to understand the spiritualness of that area. And, you know, it's really, really great to be here today to witness what happened this morning, but also to be on the journey with councillors around the table of varying persuasions, ideas, and to go through the working group process with everybody around the table. It was so balanced. Some people had ideas that they were really supportive, others not so, and to all sit around the table and work together to input everything that we had heard from our community. And you know, that community is really diverse. It's not just people on Facebook. It's not just people walking along the street. It's everywhere. And I can, hand on heart, say that I've had some really deep and meaningful conversations with our people in the community. And my really rejiggy. Thanks. And so throughout that process, I have really tried hard to keep an open mind, but I've also been a little similar to James in the sense that we've watched this project evolve and had its ups and downs over the years. And, you know, I have listened to the operators. I'm a business owner myself. We get dictated to in different realms of our business, and we have to work through those things that are thrown us from a sideways perspective, and that's part of business. And you know, in my business, I've had huge ups and downs that are out of my control. And I think that with you know, the commentary around the table today, there has been huge support for the business directly and indirectly impacted by our decision that we'll make today. So I am supportive of this project. There are so many aspects of our well-being that are covered in this project. I think of old people, I think of young people, I think of the accessibility to our beautiful coastline that so many people can't actually access through ill health or whatever. So absolutely, I support this project, and I'm really pleased to see the different changes that have been made and amended to progress this project on with a little more consultation and a little bit more thought. But as a project, I support it. In terms of the process, I'm heartened that we will be reviewing it, and you know, we're not here to vote on the process. And today we heard many speakers talk about the sense of the project that they want something down there, they want a building, they want a hub, and they just didn't like the process that it took to get there. Had the process be different, they would still be wanting something down there. So at the end of the day, we're here to support or not this project, and I'm supporting it.
Councillor Randall.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'll be voting strongly against it, and I like to say I endorse what Councillor Compton has said. Thank you.
Councillor Holliday.
I'll also be endorsing what Councillor Compton said. This has been a journey. I've been involved in this journey for a while now myself, from another side, I guess, and another angle. To be brutally honest, I feel a bit ripped off. I think we had a good opportunity at the beginning of this to work with our community, and I get told we need to be looking at from that strategic perspective, but I think we've also got to very much be taking on board what our community is telling us as well. I'm very concerned that there'll be reputational damage to this council around this process, and if we think that this is just going to go away when we say yes, then it's going to be very interesting to see how we go over the next couple of years. I'm very concerned about the commercial aspect of what's going into that space. This started off as being non-commercial. It's a park. We're going to be losing a big chunk of that park, and I'm very concerned about commercial creepage, is what I would call it. This is developed from a non-commercial to a little bit of commercial to what potentially could be quite a lot of commercial. And I guess talking about the community aspect of that is the consenting and the having to put that commercial activity out into the community as well. We're going to have to go through those processes as well. Because of that, I see that we will potentially have blowouts. I'm not comfortable with the forecast figures. I would have liked to have seen this project simplified. I think we can achieve what we want to achieve in this space, but have a very much a simpler approach to the build. But we will be where we're at, and we will see where this goes. Yep, I'll be voting in the negative, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So back in May last year, we were given the opportunity to vote about whether or not this would go to the PGF. I voted yes at that point in time, but I had a number of reservations, but I wanted to go into this with an open mind to see how the project would develop and where it landed, and particularly around the numbers. And I certainly agree with Councillor Compton in terms of I do not believe the numbers stack up, that the numbers actually make this a viable project. It's a real shame also too that this project, in many ways, it's sort of run like a juggernaut where it's just been full steam ahead. There has been no opportunity for the community to be involved, and projects that work well are the ones that take the community along with them or bring the community along with them. I certainly agree that then the story of our history and our iwi perspectives need to be told. Certainly that the biosecurity aspect needs to be considered, but I think that what is being proposed is just way too big, and I've also got major concerns about the location of where it is being held. I feel that by reservedly saying yes, that there's not going to be any change to the direction. So it's come to a time now, which is basically 9 months later, where, you know, enough is enough, and so I will be voting no today. Thank you.
Can I again flog the horse that I flogged before? 25 years I've been here, almost half of it as a journalist, half of it as an elected member. This is not the only project in the angst that the community has gone through. I remember when the library was built, huge objections, very passionate objections, waste of money. We just need a small one. We can just rent some space in coastlands. We've got a library now. Beautiful building. Residential satisfaction surveys consistently put it up at 95%, 96%, 98%. I remember the Aqua Centre, again, huge objections. That was a $24 million project. Cost did escalate. Difficult journey. There's one of our valued infrastructure now. Again, satisfaction level from community up in the 90s, high 90s. This very building itself was a poky little building, the council building. When the councils were having a meeting, I remember as a journalist sitting down there, and there were worms that fell on the deputy mayor's desk because of flies and birds had died in the ceilings and fly blown. Look at this building now. We are a growing district. And so he said, oh, we haven't got the public support. Look at the public support for all this now. Things change. You take the brave steps. You step up and do stuff. Look at what Kāpiti College has done, the risk that they took, the Performing Arts Centre. That is iconic. And you know the report said about Parampuru Beach, that used to be the icon, that used to be the centre of the district. Until coastlands opened up here and the centre shifted. And the report said the Parampuru Beach area is looking tired. This will put a benchmark on that and it will lift the tide. Things have changed in the local government. You know, the four well-beings means we need to balance the social well-being, the environmental well-being, the cultural well-being, and the economic well-being. The economic well-being is important, but we also need to look at the other elements of it. That's what makes local government different. And that's why I will vote for this. Having said that, I think today's meeting was really good. The public came, vote no, just vote no, just vote no, not affordable. That's all good. This is part and parcel of the process. But we are here to make some decisions, and good decision making sometimes is hard. Like Rob McCann has said, Councillor McCann has said, it's hard. A few of the other councillors have said it's been difficult. Emotionally taxing for all of us. Today has been a long, long day. With that, I now ask Rob McCann's right of reply.
I've got a fresh battery, so I could go on through, but I'd just like to acknowledge the really thoughtful way in which this council has gone through this process. We know that there are differing opinions, and I think as councillors we acknowledged there were some real issues with the process, and we took some of that process back. And I hesitate to say, I was reminded that we might have been straying into operational matters. But I think it was really important that the members of our community, the stakeholders were heard, and that we really made sure that the business plan, such as it was, reflected that. And there were a number of councillors who were given the opportunity to participate in that. So, you know, I really want to say thank you to Councillor Halliday, who would agree that he wasn't one of the more supportive on this project, but for working through those issues, because it is much easier to throw Molotov cocktails from the outside and not look for solutions. So I think as a council we've done really well to try and look through the problems and for solutions, and then come up with a project that we can all vote on. The phrase that I've used at a couple of meetings was that perfection is the enemy of good. I just don't know how we could end up with perfection in this case, because the community wants so many different things. And as the CE has rightly put out, perhaps some of our expectations of what this can achieve are too high. But as a working group, we've made sure that it takes on board the four well-beings, not just the economic impacts for our community. And as someone who came here as a 7 or 8 year old boy to a place that was known as Pram by white boys like me, this community is growing up and beginning to want to tell its story. And I feel that Paraparaumu now wants to recognise our history and the history that is that exists long before us and long before some of us moved here. We've heard some very powerful stories today that resonate with that particular point. And I think the Deputy Mayor said it much better than I ever will, but that certainly was incredibly powerful today. And another reason why I think is our community, we are growing up and beginning to look at what our community should look like and can look like. I wasn't actually prepared for this speech, Mr. Mayor. I didn't quite understand that by changing the motion that I'd be doing it. So you can all know that I'm speaking from the heart, not from prepared notes. I'd like to congratulate all the councillors for the way in which we have risen above what is a very, very difficult subject, and I hope that we can continue to work like that and work respectfully even when we disagree. So with that, I'd like to support the motion.
Thank you. The alternative resolution, the motion, substantive motion 81, moved by Councillor McCann, seconded by Councillor Holbrook. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? No. Division? All those in favour, put your hand up. Chief Executive.
Mine's dead too. Councillor Hanford, Councillor Buswell, Councillor Coots, the Mayor, Councillor Holborough, Councillor Elliott, Councillor McCann.
Those against?
Against, Councillor Halliday, Councillor Compton, Councillor Pravanov, Councillor Randall.
Motion is carried. Councillor Coots.
Your Worship, I just need some guidance around some other motions that we were proposing, and I think that's now been superseded. I think that's now been superseded given the motion that we have here, but I do want to table them. The first one was, and sorry, I hadn't written the first one out because I thought Councillor McCann had something around that, but there was the suggestion around the removal of fees in year one to test the assumptions. So can we bring that back to a later report when we... So removal of the fees to the operators in year one to allow for the assumptions to be tested?
Councillor, you could either move it as a resolution, or we can put it in the minute at your request, and with the Chair's acceptance, the things you want we could put in the minute so that it's recorded.
Put it in the minute so it's recorded rather than the resolution. The second one was that any future price increases to the operators are considered by the council via a staff report. including feedback from any operators affected by the increases.
So we are all comfortable that this be included in the minutes?
Well, I'm happy if you want to. It's just about whether, because given the business model hasn't been approved.
Chief Executive.
And there was one more.
Of course you could, Councillor. I think that would be slightly at odds because what has just been moved is that we haven't decided the operating model. So the things that this councillor would like do reflect directly from what operating model is decided. Does that make sense? So that is why I feel it is better that it is noted so you're aware of it, and that is, if you like, a writing instruction for us, but not a motion that is at odds with what's just been resolved.
So note the word I like is writing instruction. The third one.
And in doing so, I'm trying to send a signal to those, the operators and those concerned as well. The last one, is there any charges to the operators that, I hadn't realised I had written that one down. So that was there any charges to the operators who were deferred for year one? Sorry, I hadn't included that. So it was just the two.
Yes, the two. So there's agreement, staff have got that.
Could I just speak to the one around the assumptions? And that is after speaking directly with the operators and their concern around the process when considering the price increases. So if they're not performing well as a company, that the decision could be made internally by staff to increase the prices without any consideration to their viability. So it just allows an understanding around the process around that to give them some reassurance.
So any comments around that? Councillor McCann.
I just want to support what Councillor Cootes is saying, and it's the same discussions that I've had here in Council and in the working group. I think these two additions or notations, or whatever we're calling them, are really important given the nature of the economy and the fact that the decisions we're going to have are going to directly affect these two businesses. So we should be able to be flexible if the visitor numbers don't meet the information that we've put on the table as part of the business plan. We should reflect the cost to the businesses. We should move appropriately.
Anybody else on the matter? Otherwise, it's noted there's a writing instruction to staff.
Thank you,
Resolution 82, I'm going to move that. I'm not going to speak to it anymore. I'm sort of, my voice is going. Yes.
It's a sign that we should. So I just think that it's important to note at this point that this is alongside the government contribution and the impact that has had on our ability to carry out this project in a robust and meaningful way. And then added to that, the challenges around COVID. And I just actually like to congratulate staff who worked so hard and so fast to get that other 50% through from the government. That was no mean feat. And whatever problems happen with the process aside from that, I think that needs to be acknowledged because it's a significant achievement on behalf of our staff. And we know that we've struggled to get that government funding into our area, and that we have that to be able to deliver something that's meaningful and of high quality and potentially of a significant, of a size that's going to be useful for a variety of uses. So I just thought that I wouldn't let this funding bit go without acknowledging that. And also saying that that's part of the reason this was so hard is because we couldn't go back and we couldn't start again and we couldn't give it more time because that funding can disappear as fast as it appears, and we all know that. So that really added to the pressure of the decision that we made today. So I just wanted to make those observations as we provide our 50% funding into this project.
Anybody else?
Sorry, I've got fresh batteries again.
Councillor Mclean.
Very briefly, Mr Mayor, I just wanted to say that I've heard from so many members of the community that they want a gateway, and the discussion ends up being that we'll decide what it is later and pay for it later. So I'm very comfortable that there are a significant number of people who actually still think that we should spend the money that was apportioned, but they've got hooked up in the process that we all acknowledge has been difficult. So just agreeing with what the Deputy Mayor said.
Okay. Resolution 82 moved by the Mayor, seconded by Councillor Holbrook. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? Division. All those in favour?
Councillor Hanford, Buswell, Coots, the Mayor, Councillors Holborough, Elliott, McCann.
Those against?
Councillors Halliday, Compton, Pravanov, Randall.
Carried. That brings an end to that item. Thank you very much to the staff.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I'm sorry, but you could have a 2-minute break, but you
Right, everybody, let's start. Item number 8.2, page 84. Natasha Todd.
Thank you, everyone. I will keep this very brief. I'll take the report as read and just add that all of the other councils in the region, plus Horowhenua, who are part of the growth framework, have approved this key set of recommendations and have agreed to set up a joint committee, so we're the last cab off the ranks. And the recommendations do come as a set, so they do need to be all passed together, and I'll leave it at that.
It's basically a regional template. Already the joint committee is working, in a sense, right? Okay. Any questions? Or shouldn't I ask? No questions?
Are there any drawbacks? Are there any concerns that have been raised?
Or me have to go to yet another meeting.
Are there any other positives apart from that? Are there any drawbacks? Sorry, thank you.
Councillor, thank you. There's a big positive. This committee, once formed, certainly for the regional growth element, will have 3 government ministers sitting at it. So this is finally a chance to start to get some influence, and you can give the mayor or deputy your instructions about what bribes or leverage or whatever else to use. They're not live stream now, are we? No, but we see this as a big positive. Much like elsewhere in the country, this is where ministers come to the table and participate. All iwi will also be part of it. So it's a large group, but one that can make a difference, certainly in the regional growth space. And just to reiterate, it also will include other elements such as economic development strategy.
In the Horowhenua is a different creature, this one. Okay, Councillor Holiday.
Oh, look, just clarifying from my end, if that's all right. So what's going to be important about this is the advocacy we do in that space, the voice that we have in that space. Is that right? I'd like to get your tyre half made up from that lot down there and get in their boots and all.
Sorry, I just want to ask the Chief Executive. I didn't get the issue of the Raukawa Kititonga, the role of that, because it's part of the Horowhenua side, is it?
If I understand correctly, Natasha might chip in, but if I understand it, Raukawa Rohi is very large, well outside this group, and so what they've acknowledged is how are they going to work with Raukawa on who should attend and represent what part of the Rohi.
Yeah, it's internal matter. Okay, no, that's clear. Councillor Coates.
It's actually me.
Oh, sorry.
I just want to...
Councillor Coates, you look much better now.
I don't have any issues. I don't have any issues at all with this, but what I would like to acknowledge somewhere is the fact that poor Kim has been sitting here all day, and at 5:10 she left. And so I just want to acknowledge that she has been here all day and her commitment to the project to inform us and to help us through this process today.
Can I request that or an email be sent from the mayor?
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Elliott?
I just wanted to know how this will is proposed to stitch away with and work with the mayoral forum cycle of meetings and how they're expected to work. So do you sit at the mayoral forum and decide on items to lobby at this, or what was the plan? What was the plan in setting up this?
Chief Executive, because I think local government managers for the region have been working very hard in the background.
There are 3 groupings, I guess. There is an officers grouping that informs a chief executive's grouping that influences this group. So you specifically asked about the mayoral forum. No, you will find that will operate quite separately from this. This, interestingly, will have to run quite specifically with a set format because there is different membership depending on which element the group will be dealing with. Regional growth strategy, economic development, possibly emergency management, but that depends on other changes that could happen and possibly even one other activity. So your point about the mayoral forum influencing it, because they're all the same membership, they may well do. The downside is it simply means they have to travel usually to Upper Hutt to attend meetings on consecutive weeks usually, so they're almost living there on Fridays. Is probably the real practical consequence of it, is that there are a lot of meetings, as the Deputy Mayor mentioned. I think these will meet less frequently than the Mayoral Forum, quarterly.
Right. But the key to this is having the ministers there. You know, that's the main key. And look, anybody else? Otherwise, can somebody move resolution 1 to 10 or 11? Moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Buswell. Right of intro. Good stuff. Yeah.
I'd just like to point out another positive. Is number 11, note that the Wellington Regional Strategy Committee is likely to be disestablished. That's a piece of good news.
Right, after that scintillating debate, resolution moved by Councillor Elliott and seconded by Councillor Buswell. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. Right, now item number 9.1, confirmation of minutes, page 92. Somebody move recommendation 1, that the minutes for the council meeting of 28th January 2021 be accepted as a true and correct record. Councillor Holbrook moved, seconded by Councillor Hansford. All those in favour say aye. Those against, carried. We now move into public exclusion. I move into public exclusion. Can I have a seconder? All those in favour?